Jennifer and Caleb's love story begins way back in high school at Greenwood Community. They were introduced at a swim meet by their mutual friend at the time. Jennifer noticed how polite he was and how Caleb's eyes seemed to pierce the soul. Oh, and he had rippling, bulging biceps. Caleb specifically remembers the humidity and the smell of the pool water in the air. Jen was in a gray t-shirt and black pants, but he can't remember anything else about what she was wearing because he could not stop looking into her bright blue eyes.
Wow.
That was his part. They very quickly became friends, spending hours and hours on the phone at night, with Jen describing the annoyances of her job stocking shelves, and Caleb telling Jen how many wheelbarrows of horse apples he had taken out that day. They would literally talk on the phone until they were ready to fall asleep. In fact, Jen actually did fall asleep on Caleb at one point. It's true. So the long talks continued, and every so often Caleb and Jen would hang out. One day, they met at a park near both of their houses, and as they sat on the bench underneath a walnut tree, Caleb brushed the hair out of Jen's face and immediately realized this was the perfect moment to steal a kiss. Jen kissed him back, and their first kiss was in the books. As life often does, it ended up taking Jen and Caleb down different paths. The phone calls became more infrequent, and eventually, while looking up on Facebook, Caleb realized that Jen was seeing someone. Every time he checked up on her, she was with the same person, so he assumed she was happy and went on with his own path. Caleb eventually tied the knot and had a beautiful daughter and great flower girl, Annabelle. So they were both in relationships, but Jen and Caleb could not stop thinking about each other every so often, remembering all the good times they had already had. Eventually, Caleb found himself newly single. His coworker told him he works too hard and needs to get back in the dating game. So he created a profile on the most upstanding dating site at the time, Plenty of Fish. Those of you that know anything about Plenty of Fish, man, let me tell you, it's like the Mos Eisley of Star Wars. Okay, little did he know, Jen's relationship had also ended, and she was already on Plenty of Fish. As a matter of fact, she was so sick of it that she decided to log in to cancel her account when she noticed a message from Caleb. She instantly remembered him, and her heart jumped. This was his first message. Howdy, Jennifer M. Stone. I do not know if you remember me. I am Caleb Donovan Brown. We were introduced by Deb back in high school and would talk for hours on end until you would pass out on the phone. Even if you don't remember me, I just have to say your eyes are still as hypnotic blue as they ever were. My number is such and such. Call or text me anytime if you'd like to talk. I don't sleep much and work third shift, so message me anytime. So in other words, totally not a weird, creepy message at all. Caleb then went back to work and noticed his phone light up. Annoyed, he picked it up, assuming his ex was messaging to pick yet another fight. However, it was Jen who had immediately messaged him saying, "You do remember me!" The texts and calls resumed, and within days they started dating. Jen didn't know at the time that Caleb, who never took time off work, actually took an entire week off of work in case this date went well and led to a second. On August 14th, 2016, Caleb drove to Jen in order to pick her up for the date. Caleb remembers exactly what happened when she came out to the truck. He says, "I got out of my truck and went around and opened the door. I turned around. The sun was setting over the top roof. The wind was blowing slightly, not enough to where I couldn't see her face, but just the right amount to blow a few strands in front of her face to make me think of one of those slow motion entrances you see in the movies. And once she moved her hair and looked up, I looked her directly in the eyes and time stopped. She was still at least 20 feet from the truck, and I could not stop staring at how her eyes looked. I was starstruck, and I didn't hear what she said at first, so I had to have her repeat back what she had said, but I didn't want her thinking that I was just fully gaga over her. So I blamed it on the wind and working in a factory. They went to Logan's Steakhouse in Greenwood, and after Caleb asked her if she wanted to go home and stay out, she told him she wanted to stay out and find somewhere to go look at the stars. Caleb knew just a spot near Atterbury, and with nothing but a few frogs around them and under the light of the Milky Way galaxy overhead, they shared their second first kiss. They had been dating for just over a year when Annabelle asked her dad why he hadn't asked Jen to marry him yet. He told her that he wanted to talk to her about it, but hadn't had time to sit down and ask her about it yet. So Annabelle said, well, now you need to put a ring on it. At that point, Calyb and Jen's finances were a little tight. Calyb had just started with the union and they had moved into their own 2-bedroom apartment. Calyb had already purchased an engagement ring but had worked so much overtime that he forgot he bought it. So he asked Teresa for one of her rings and then told his mom about it. His mom promptly called him a big dummy and reminded him that he had already bought one and asked her to hold on to it. A couple of days before the proposal, Jen could tell something was a little bit off about Calyb. At Thanksgiving, he and Teresa had a rather lengthy conversation alone, which she thought was odd. She assumed correctly that it was about a proposal. The night before Calyb popped the question was not easy for Jen. She had a horrible headache and was sore, tired, and grumpy, and just wanted to go to bed. Calyb asked her, so now is probably not a good time for a surprise, is it? Jen said, probably not a good time for a proposal or anything, no. He said, okay. But then Jen kept asking him what the surprise was. She wondered if it was a proposal, but couldn't remember when he would have the time to buy a ring. So she shrugged it off and assumed it was something else. The next morning, Calyb said goodbye as if he was going to work, but then turned around and kneeled and asked Jen to pick, left or right. Jen picked left, Caleb's right. Jen picked correctly, and Calyb brought out the ring and asked her, will you marry me? After the shock and disbelief worn off, Jen said yes. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to read to you exactly how Calyb and Jennifer ended their versions of their love stories. Jennifer said this about Calyb, and I quote, I know he's the perfect one for me because more than anything else, I know he will always try for me. He stresses so much about doing everything just right and being perfect and doing enough and being enough for everyone, especially me. But the simple fact that he tries for me, that he tries to do better and be better, that he compromises with me, that we can communicate when we come to a disagreement or a snag in the road, we don't just dig our heels and see who's more persistent or stronger. We talk it through and work it out together like a team. I'm a tricky person to be with. I am constantly changing, and the rules do too. I'm anal retentive and need things to be a certain way. I'm obsessed with having a clean home and get stressed out about all the wrong things. But Calyb is there for me. He understands me and listens to me. And when I get to be too much for him and start to get on his nerves, before he even says anything about it, he stops and thinks about it, and whether the thing he's upset about is that big and considers what I'm going through. He's a better person than I am, that's for sure. He has such a wealth of knowledge about a variety of subjects and completely fascinates me with the way he thinks and his sense of humor. And he laughs at my morbid jokes, the ones that make everyone else feel very uncomfortable, the ones other people are afraid to laugh at because they think their soul may be damned if they do. He laughs at those jokes. And not the uncomfortable no. He laughs in a way that it's full-blown laughter. I love it. I'm obsessed with his laugh. I do whatever I can to make him laugh just so I can hear it again. I love him to the moon and back entirely, and I can't wait to grow old with him. I'm so excited to meet every version of my Calyb. Calyb wrote this about Jennifer, and I quote, here we are on this day, and I'm still falling more and more in love with her every day, every minute, every second. I can't wait to see what all this life has in store for us. But what I do know is that with Jen by my side, not in front of, not behind, but by my side, hand in hand, we are partners and can do anything and complete it together until the end of time. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoying their very first dance as a husband and wife, Jen and Calyb.